In this video, I'm going to be talking about the deploy scripts that are used in the multi-cluster demo, going into more technical detail about what they actually do. I've modified it from the original video so it now provisions 2 AKS clusters and 1 EKS cluster. Here at the top, you can see the script uses environment variables for many simple customizations. The script will first check that all needed commands are installed, and both clouds have valid credentials and are logged in. The actual resource provisioning happens in parallel. This function handles the Azure resources. It first creates the resource group, if not already present. Then we pass in the predefined names and regions for all the clusters. The deployment itself runs through a bicep file, which we can view here. This creates the fleet resource, which is a managed Kubernetes cluster on Azure used to propagate resources to the members. Next are the 2 normal AKS clusters in the specified region. Finally, they're connected to the fleet, and the cluster's IDs and names are returned to the main script. Those are then used to grant access to the AZ CLI user and get the Kube API credentials for those 3 clusters. For deploying the Amazon cluster, we use the EKS control command line tool. We create the cluster and the service accounts, subnets, and add-ons. Because we're using Istio networking, we do need a public IP address for our load balancers, so we need to set that up as well. And finally, we need a storage class, so we can provision our disks for the actual storage of our data. Then we join the EKS cluster to the fleet using the join.mc script that comes from the OSS fleet repo. It uses the kube configs that we added earlier to make the needed connections. From there, we install the cert manager on all 3 clusters. The cert manager is a common tool that simplifies the management of certificates, which will be needed for secure communication between pods within and between Kubernetes clusters. Next is installing Istio on all 3 clusters, and we set up our east-west gateway. We check for and install everything from the Istio control command line tool to the operator on each cluster, so there are no prerequisites for this step. And finally, we install the operator itself, which also includes the cloud-native Postgres or CMPG operator. Once we install the operator on the hub, we use this cluster resource placement to distribute that resource to all of the members. So this is all just a once per cluster process to set up the infrastructure for managing DocumentDB clusters. And once it's done, we can use the DocumentDB CRD to make any number of databases. And so, to deploy the DocumentDB cluster, we start by collecting all the names into a cluster array and picking the first one, which is EKS here, to be the primary. This is just an arbitrary choice, and any could have been chosen. Then we dynamically create our YAML file for deployment. It passes in the password, cluster list, and chosen primary, and also the custom storage class for EKS, because it doesn't have a default storage class. Each cluster needs to know its own name, so we use a hard-coded cluster name config map in the kube system namespace in order to manage that. This allows us to distribute the same DocumentDB resource to all the clusters through the fleet, but they can each know their own role, primary or replica, and adjust accordingly. Finally, we have the Azure DNS zone. This creates a unique URL for each cluster's DocumentDB load balancer IP, as well as an SRV string that we point to the primary and repoint for failover operations. This ensures that the client can use a consistent URL and the switchover can be handled elsewhere. This is specific to this script and for our demo. So now I've run those scripts, and I just want to show you what gets provisioned. So we can see here on EKS we've got our 3 pods, and on Azure we've just got the 1 replica pod. And right now we have no databases, but I'm going to insert into our primary on AWS, and we will see that it will replicate to Azure. Create a document. We'll just say something like name test document. And save. Now we should see test document here, and then if we refresh the Azure and go into documents, there we go, test document.